The opinions and views shared in this podcast are the opinions and views of the host and the host alone. They are not a reflection of his employer or any other organization that the host is a member of. The host does not speak for anyone, only himself.
This is the I Am Pitts podcast. Get ready for contact. Yeah, get some.
Any available unit. Copy on a shooting.
Oscar 37 en route.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is your boy Dex with the I Am Pitts podcast, and I'm back for another episode. Got a banger of an episode for you today. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for waiting with me. Happy to be back. As I always say, busy man, especially this time of season. We just had the Kentucky Derby, and so it's been, like I said, it's just been a little crazy. But I had my episode last week where I had Chaplain Jared Altick on, so I was glad to get that done. And also, just to give you all an update, I was telling you all that I was going to quit video and go back to doing audio only. I'm going to pause that for a second because I'm trying something now where I'm now connecting with a hard wire to the Ethernet. So hopefully that takes care of all the issues I've been having with Wi-Fi. So hopefully that kind of fixes things and the product gets a little better, a little bit more clear. That is any audio issue, so I apologize for that. I'm not a tech guy. I'm a 40-year-old man right now, okay? So, yeah, technology is not where it's at for me, but understand it's part of the game. It's part of what we do. So I'm going to try my best to make it better for you all, okay? So I appreciate y'all for hanging in there with me for that. But before we get started, we got to go through, I'm not going to call them sponsors. I'm just going to say my homies, man, and that's my peeps over at Gunfighter Trading Company. Right now, if you look on the screen, you can see their beautiful website they got. I'm sitting here telling you all, like I told you last time, I am burning the American Frontier candle. This has become my favorite candle of theirs. Smells like freedom and smells like America. Smells like the great American frontier, man. I'm loving their products. I love their shirts. They got soaps. Man, they got all different types of stuff they're doing over there. So, I mean, like I told you, man, it's a veteran-owned company run by cops and veterans. And as you know, I support our cops and I support our veterans. So make sure you go to gunfightertrading.co, go to the website, hit the merch store, man, get you a shirt, get you some of these nice candles. They have supply right now. So definitely get yours and make great gifts for your husbands, for your friends, or your fellow officers. I know when they came to town, I bought a bunch of stuff and I gave it to my buddies at work, and everybody was ranting and raving about Gunfighter Trading candles. So everybody was real happy with them. So, all right. But also, I got another homie to the show that I want to put you all onto. And this is my buddy Chuck. So I met Chuck probably about 2 years ago when I was working off duty downtown at Angels Envy. And he and I just kind of hit it off. And he was a super cool dude. And next thing come to find out, Chuck's a businessman and Chuck's got a couple businesses. And Chuck is also one of the founders, there's a couple founders of Deployment Cigar Company. So if you don't know who Deployment Company is, this is a wonderful, wonderful company. If you like cigars, me personally, I tell people I'm not a big cigar guy, but I will have a cigar in the right moment under the right circumstances. And I've had more than my fair share of cigars with Chuck under the right circumstances. He came down to visit me a couple weeks ago, about a week ago, the day before Derby, the day before the Oaks. He came down to visit me. He and I went and grabbed some food, hung out, and I had a cigar. And I got to tell you, they are phenomenal cigars, man. Phenomenal cigars. So, and this is the great thing about Deployment Cigar Company. There's a statement here. We are the cigar company on mission. DeploymentCigar.com is a veteran co-owned premium small batch cigar company. We develop our exclusive flavor profiles with the same mission focus we learned as military members serving this great country. And we are committed to supporting veterans, law enforcement, and first responders. With every purchase you make, we send cigars to active duty military and first responders. And why do I share this with you all? Because if there's one thing I believe in, I believe in giving to those and taking care of those who take care of us. So that's militaries and all first responders. Shout out to anybody in the military and those that are first responders. So do me a favor if you are a cigar person on there, and I promise you, you will not regret it. Everybody that has had a Deployment cigar has ranted and raved about them. And it's even more so, it's not about the cigar. It's about what the cigar does. They send these cigars to military service members overseas, first responders out here on the line day in and day out, protecting and taking care of the people. And man, like I said, I'm not a big cigar guy, but the times I have had a cigar are some of the times and moments I remember the most in my life. And there is nothing better than a good cigar like mixed with the perfect moment, like in a cup of bourbon, you and the boys just sitting in the back, recanting a deployment and just sharing memories. Man, that's what a cigar is about, what a cigar is for. Some people smoke every day. I am an occasional smoker, but like I said, it is all about the perfect occasion. And you can't go wrong with a deployment cigar. So go to deploymentcigarcompany.com, okay? Make sure you get your cigars. Like I said, get your cigars, get your smoke on, but also realize that you are contributing to something greater than just you having a good cigar. You're creating memories for men and women who serve this country. All right. So, with that said, we're gonna go ahead and get to the show. And so, like I said, it's been kind of crazy, kind of busy. I had my first derby experience as a police officer, not working the street, but as a police officer on a personal security escort for a very, very, very rich and successful company. A From what I understand, a $14 billion company. And these people were super cool, super nice, man. They made me feel really good. And man, rich people, I ain't gonna say rich people, wealthy people get a bad rep in this country for being, jerks and just conceited and not cool with anybody else. But these people know I'm a cop. They know I ain't got a lot of money. And guess what? They treated me like I was one of their own the entire time. And it was a phenomenal experience, man. Phenomenal experience. And the best part is I got paid to do it. Well, everybody was paying to go to Derby. I was getting paid to be there. And guess what? I like money. I like making money, man. But so this was my first experience going up on what they call Millionaires Row while I was at the Derby. And I'm in full uniform, So it's a first for me because like I said, I've been a cop for about 15 years. And the time I spent with the Louisville Metro Police Department, guess where I was? I wasn't at the track. I was at the track, but I was outside on the streets, corralling the drunk people, stopping fights. I never cared about Derby or the horses and the racing because I was always working and I was always on a detail. Therefore, I was always having to deal with some mess. But this was my first year where I actually got to go up to the prestige area known as Millionaires Row. And there's a new level that they just put in there. I think it's called the Sperry's or Aries or whatever it was where we were at. And man, it was a phenomenal experience. Like you could just smell the money and success, man. It was crazy. I mean, man, you got a guy that was in there. So you're rich when you're just walking around handing out random $20 bills to people. Had some random dude came up to me and said, "Hey, officer, thanks for your service," and threw me a 20. Now, me, I'm not a betting man. I don't like losing money. I feel like I'm just giving money away to people. But I took that 20 and I put it on a horse for the first time in my life because I've never gambled. Yeah, and I did not win anything, but at the same time, guess what? I lost his money, not my money. And guess what? My wife ain't gonna be mad about that because my wife ain't know about that because it was not our money, it did not come from our account. So we're cool. But man, people, like I said, people have this belief that rich people are jerks, and like I said, that could be the furthest from the truth. But when I was there were a bunch of famous people I got to see. But I will tell you what stuck out to me was Travis Kelce, because everybody and their mama was trying to get a picture with Travis Kelce. I'm not gonna lie, I was petty. I snuck me a picture with Travis Kelce, which he did not know about. I just saw him in the background. In my background, I pulled out my phone, popped a selfie, sent it to my kids, and guess what? Now I'm the coolest dad on earth because I took a quote unquote picture with Travis Kelce. So my kids thought that was pretty cool. So I'm gonna keep them cool dad points on that one, yo. But this is what I noticed, man, was every time he got up to go anywhere, this man had an entourage of people with him. And it was like 4 or 5 dudes. Like every time he would get up to go to the bathroom or go anywhere, just these dudes had to follow him. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's Travis Kelce. I just want to see Travis Kelce." And the cool part is all my buddies, all my cop friends were the ones guarding him. So if I wanted to get in, have gotten in there and got a better picture, I probably could have, but I'm in uniform and I'm trying to be a professional and I don't want to be a fangirl. So I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll take my little sneaky selfie I took with him. But I just thought to myself, I was like, man, that looks like a miserable experience. If I'm getting up to go roll a fat one and drop a hot deuce in the bathroom, that I would have to have 5 of my homeboys with me every time, just go to the bathroom. I mean, man, it seems like a great experience from the outside, but when you get on the inside of it and you see it, and you realize like this has to be a miserable existence. And I'm sure there are some people that love the fame and the attention. Personally, I would just want the money. You can keep the fame. That's why I say I don't get on here trying to become famous and become a influencer and have all this influence and meet all these people because I don't care about that. I like my life the way as is. I would hate to wake up tomorrow morning and be famous and have the paparazzi outside of my front yard as I go to pick up a newspaper, go to check my mail or take out the trash. But like, who wants to live that experience? But some people do. And hey, if that's you and that's what you want to live, so be it, yo. But that's not what I want for myself, man. But this is what we have to look at when it comes to famous people and when it comes to people that are very successful in this life, like the people I was escorting. No matter what they have going on, no matter what they got in their bank account, how much money they got, guess what? They're still people at the end of the day. They just have a lot more bankroll than us. But guess what? They still got problems. They got family problems. They have relationship problems. They have health problems. They have problems at work. They have problems with their bosses. They don't want to pay taxes. Guess what? Because they're people. And so for me, I think it's important that we take that into account when we start looking at people and comparing our lives and think that people are living these great, spectacular lives, because they got money and they're doing all these cool things. I think that it's important that we sometimes step back and re-examine the people that we're looking up to and the people that we're following and let influence us when we pull out our phones and hop on social media. And that's why I tell people you have to be careful who you let influence you every day. Who are you following on social media? Because here's what we have to look at. A lot of people have social media. Everybody got social media. Despite what the New York governor Kathy Hochul said the other day about something, it was about black people not knowing what a computer is, and the fact that she would say that about black people in 2024, it's kind of bizarre. It's kind of wild. I'll be honest, it's the wildest statement I've heard by a politician since Joe Biden's poor kids is just as bright and just as just as bright as rich kids. Or the other famous Joe Biden quote: "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black." That's no Kathy Hochul making that statement is probably the wildest statement since I heard in a while. But the fact that it's 2024, man. Black people are a part of modern society. We ain't just come out the slave field from picking cotton. We've been here, man. We've been here with the changes. We've been here with the technology upgrades. And ain't just like, oh my God, I got a phone. I don't know what to do with it, boss. Excuse me, massa. What's this thing you got called the internet here? No, that ain't. No, we got phones, man. We're a part of modern society. So, man, like I said, with that being the case, like I said, it's 2024, and everyone knows what a computer is, and everyone has a cell phone with internet access and social media account. And guess what happens when you have people, a large amount of people that have access to the internet and the phone and social media? You have crazy people that are getting on apps and getting on social media and creating a following. You have crazy people out here influencing people. And so that's why you have to be careful with who you open your mind to and who you are listening to, because you don't know what somebody's really feeding you. And so for me, everyone has an opinion and everyone has a voice, and I understand that. And like I said, even crazy people have a voice. But with that being said, it's important that we really focus on who you follow and who you want to lead you. So personally, like I told y'all, I hate the term influencer. I don't like the term public figure because now everybody's a public figure. And nowadays, everybody is just, I'm a social media influencer. And I just get so sick of it. It's cringe and it's kind of cliche at this point. So, hence why I don't put that on any of my social media pages. And dude, I told you, I'm just a 40-year-old dude, man. I'm a 40-year-old bro with a lot of life experience and with an opinion, and I can back up those opinions for the most part with the things I've done and experienced in life. So for me, I don't want people to see me as an influencer. I just honestly, when you come onto my page or you listen to the podcast, man, I just want y'all to see, man, that's Dex, man. Don't come run up to me in public. Oh my God, it's Dex. No, it's not like that. Them days for me are gone. I've had my times on HBO and all that. I'm just a bro. I'm just a dude, man. So the thing is, We had this event that happened here in America a couple weeks ago. We're all familiar with the end of the world solar eclipse that everybody was going crazy about that took place on April 8th. I mean, we had some people seriously, literally bugging out. And it's weird to me because people were saying it's the end of the world, it's the apocalypse. And I'm just sitting here in my own world thinking, why is it the apocalypse, bro? Like we've had solar eclipses since the since the beginning of time. You know, the Aztecs saw these solar eclipses and they thought it was like a thing from the gods, or I mean, it's always happened. But now, for some odd reason, people think the eclipse is the end of the world. And events like this, what people don't realize, it brings out the crazy folks and the not so well mental folks. However, I came across this incident that happened on April 8th. And I just found it very interesting, and it doesn't really go with where I'm going in this podcast, but I just really wanted to kind of acknowledge it. But there is a lady on Instagram, not Instagram, but what's the Twitter X, and she goes by the name of Mystic X Lipstick, but her real name is Danielle Johnson, and she is a self-proclaimed astrologer and also what is called a Reiki master. For That's another word for a energy healer. And if you don't know what an energy healer is, just Google it. They're weird people. They come at you with salt lamps and salt rocks and all that. And I've known a couple people in my personal life that were energy healers and all that, and good people. Hey, just hey man, you ain't invited to the barbecue, bro. You're gonna make everybody comfortable, man. I can't have you come over to the house. I'll just send me a text. I'll chat with you. But so on that day, they had cops in L.A., Los Angeles, responded to her home, and when they got to her home, they found uh excuse me, messed that up. Pardon me. It's been a while. So cops they get dispatched to the house to a verbal altercation that's occurring. And when they get there, they find a guy on the floor dead. It's a black male and she's a black female. This guy's been stabbed up and there's a large pool of blood. So she stabs him up, kills him, takes her two kids. One is 9 years old and one is 8 months old. And she loads them into the car and she takes off driving. And while she's driving down the road, she tosses her 8-month-old baby out the car onto the freeway. And then after that, she keeps driving. Then she pushes her 9-year-old daughter out of the car and out onto the freeway. And so the 8-month-old baby dies. And then the daughter, who is still alive, she's how would you she's alive, but I guess still recovering from what I was seeing. So I mean, and I'm just reading this and I'm just like, man, what the heck is wrong with people? And so I decided to go check out this chick's, social media profiles and see what's up with Mystic X. And I came across this right here. This is her X page if you're looking on the screen. So I can't even pronounce Okoya. And so here we go. We scroll down a little bit, and this was a message made a couple days before the eclipse. She said, wake up, the apocalypse is here. Everyone who has an ear, listen. Your time to choose what you believe is now. If you believe a new world is possible for the people right now, there is power in choice. There is power in choice. Repost to make the choice for the collective. All right, yeah, little weird. And this is what I found even more disturbing. No, I'm not gonna go to that part. No, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna pull up this one right here. Yeah, she made another post. And I think this was like a day before the actual incident where she killed her family. Now let me pull this up. So yes, right here, if you look, this right here is a news article. There we go, pull up. So okay, so this post was on April 4th. She said, this eclipse is the epithet of spiritual warfare. Get your protection and on your heart in the right place. The world is very obviously changing right now. And if you ever need to pick a side, the time to do right in your life is now. Stay strong. You got this. Like I said, a lot of weird stuff from this young lady. But this is what I wanted to point out to everybody. Since we're on here talking about be careful who you follow and how you influence people, I want y'all to check this out. This chick, this nutcase had over 100,000 followers. 100,000 followers on her X account, bro. 100,000 followers. Now, I don't know what you all think about that, but that's a lot of people. And also forgot to add also, so after she threw her kids out the car and killed the baby and severely damaged her daughter, she took off at 100 miles per hour and ran into a tree and killed herself. And now she's dead. The whole family's dead. Everybody's going well except the 9-year-old. But it's just wild, man. And I'm just sitting here thinking this chick had 100,000 followers of people that were listening to her and hanging on probably to every word she said. And I'm like, man, 100,000 people is a lot of people, man. Dude, you can take over a country with 100,000 people. I mean, we invaded Iraq in 2003 with about 100,000 troops, bro. I mean, like I said, you can literally take over an entire country. And I'll have to say it again that, like I said, we have to be cautious and careful of who we're listening to when we enter the space of social media. Man, there is so much out here that is just crooked and corrupt. And there is so much out here that is trying to sway you one way or another. And like I said, the other thing is we all have opinions, we all have views, and we all have perspectives that we want to share on social media. And we are allowed to be, when we're allowed to do these things because of the United States Constitution allows us to under the First Amendment. And it says that we have the right to. But here's what I ask you all. Let me ask you, do you think that there's a catch when it comes to exercising your rights? We often talk about our rights, which is, and we always say, shall not be infringed upon. And I agree, especially when it comes to the government. However, we never talk about the responsibilities that we have as citizens with these inalienable rights. And when you have rights, it comes with responsibilities. And now some people don't want to hear that, but the truth is, yes, if you're going to live here as an American citizen, you do have rights, but you have to yield your power that comes with the rights justly in everything you do. And so typically when I do these podcasts, I've gotten away from kind of reading off of a prompter and like notes and all that. But today I'm kind of going back and I'm going to kind of be reading from my notes because this is a serious topic. And I typically rant and rave and I just kind of go off on rabbit trails and go wherever. And I don't want to do that on this episode. This is a very sensitive subject we're getting ready to get into. And the thing is, I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to misquote and I don't want to misrepresent anything. And there are certain points that I want to make sure that I cover when I'm talking about this. And so this is going to be a bit different. Hopefully everybody probably sounds better that way, bro. But but I'm bringing this up because there was an unfortunate incident that happened a couple days ago in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, where there was a senior airman by the name of Roger Fortson who was shot and killed by an Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department. And so everybody's been outraged and upset, and as they should be. I was outraged and upset when I heard it, when I seen the video. I mean, everybody was. I mean, it doesn't look great, but like I said, everyone was so quick to respond to this incident out of pure emotion, and everybody wants to be the first with the hot take. Everybody wants to be the first with, to cast judgment and throw stones. Everybody wants to be the first with the hit video online with giving their opinion and what they think. Everybody wants to be the first. And I've always told you all that listen to this podcast, but I don't want to be first. I want to be accurate and I want to be reasonable. And therefore, that's why when this came out, I said, you know what? I'm not going to make any videos about it right away. I might make a post here or there, but I'm not going to make a whole show about it and say who did what, who's guilty, who's not guilty, who's justified, who's not justified, because man, it's such an emotional thing to watch and see. This person who is presumed innocent gets shot and killed by a police officer. I mean, it's an unfortunate incident, and it should evoke a viral something out of you as an American citizen, as a military member, as a police officer. It should stir up something in you and make you uncomfortable, and it made me uncomfortable. And even more so, just the comments I was seeing online by people I know, it's just people get emotional and people get irrational. And I didn't want to be that guy because like I said, I want to give you all a fresh, honest perspective, trying to be free of bias and trying to be honest down the middle and not really push you left or right. Just kind of tell you what I see from my experience with 15 years in this line of work. And like I said, we're not going to rewatch the video because I don't want to see it, and I've seen enough of it. There's things I probably need to rewatch just so I can ask some more questions, but I don't want to watch it. I really don't. But what we will do, I'll give a quick recap. So officers are dispatched to this apartment complex in Okaloosa County at Fort Walton Beach, Florida, in reference to a domestic violence incident. The officer arrives on scene, meets with the apartment complex manager, and he's told that, hey, there was a domestic incident that was happening in apartment 1401. Somebody called. They didn't really say who called or who the person was, Joe, but they could hear a physical incident going on inside, and they said it sounds like they could hear slapping. So the officer then goes up to 1401, and you can see him in the video as he's approaching the door. He stops to takes a tactical pause where he just kind of sits and listens and then knocks on the door. Now, the first knock at the door, he did not announce who he was. So he goes back, knocks on the door twice, and says, Sheriff's Department, knocks again and says, Sheriff's Department. Airman Fortson then comes to the door and answers the door. The officer says, step back. And the next thing you know, in the video, you see Airman Roger Fortson has a gun in his hand down by his side. Now, the gun is not pointed at the officer, but the gun is by his side. The officer then pulls his service weapon, which I possibly believe was already in his hand, and then he shoots the airman 6 times, and the airman eventually dies a short time later. So I understand the anger and concern on both sides of the argument. And I'll be honest, man, my heart breaks for the officer and the airman because I believe that neither of them woke up that day with the intent to have their lives ruined or to die, as far as we know. The investigation is still ongoing. I'm not here to say who's justified or not, or assign fault or blame, because, like I said, the investigation is still pending. And Mr. Fortson is not here to defend himself, unfortunately. I am here to say that the things we do and say allowed under the Constitution, although legal, might not always be practical or best practices when we are conducting ourselves and living our lives. And that sometimes the things we do, even although legal, can lead us to unintended consequences. So, like I told y'all, I've been a cop for 15 years. I love being a police officer. And I think that one of the most important things we have to do as a police officer is be familiar with the United States Constitution. And now there are some cops that are probably not as well versed in the Constitution, although we all should be. And I mean, you can go through the academy, they can teach you so much about the Constitution, but it is up to you as a police officer to know the Constitution as best you can. And I understand it's not a big document, but it's big enough, to where if you ask me what the Sixth Amendment is, I'm not going to be able to tell you, but I will be able to know where to go find the answer. So for me, something I started doing not too long ago is this right here. So for those not watching on the YouTube channel, I am holding up what I have is a pocket constitution that I carry with me on patrol. It's the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution. It's a small little book. I bought it on Amazon myself. And I told myself, you know what? If I'm going to be a police officer and I'm going to do my job in accordance with what the founding fathers designed this country, how they designed this country to be ran, I should probably have with me a copy of the most important document that any police officer or any American citizen should know. That is the United States Constitution. So when I'm on patrol, like I said, I'm holding up for on the video for those listening on the audio only. But I'm holding up this small pocket constitution that I carry with me on patrol every day, and it sits in my left pocket next to my badge and my heart because it means that much to me. It's something I take serious, and I think it's something every cop should take serious and every citizen should take serious. People died to make America what it is today. For this document right here, for this document to mean so much. I've had friends died in combat. I've shed blood in combat for this document. And so this is something that I don't take lightly, and nobody should take lightly, yo. But we, I think sometimes in this country, we lose sight of the Constitution, especially our politicians currently. But sometimes police officers lose sight of it. Sometimes citizens lose sight of it. And that could be for a lot of reasons, yo. But you got some people that don't lose sight of it, and they know this thing like the back of their hand. And I applaud them, those that do. But sometimes there's things within the Constitution where people they see it as black and white, and I understand, but people don't have understand the concept of legal versus practical. And sometimes I think we get lost in that. So I wanted to point out a couple things about this incident using the United States Constitution, my pocket Constitution, that I feel like need to be addressed and need to be said. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the First Amendment. For those that don't know what the First Amendment is, I shall read it to you. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people to peacefully to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So when it comes to the First Amendment, we know that one thing is we're allowed to voice our opinions. We are allowed to say how we feel, and we all should. And when it comes to the First Amendment, you have people like Ben Crump, who is now involved in this case with Airman Fortson. The family has hired Ben Crump. And if you don't know who Ben Crump is, I'm going to tell you personally, my personal opinion of Ben Crump is he is a scumbag of a human being, if you ask me. Some people might disagree with that, but I know a lot of black people love him. But for me, I see him as a snake. And I've never seen a black man so thirsty for black blood to make a payday. He says he's doing it for justice, but I have differing opinions of it because Ben Crump is a race baiting liar and snake. He just is. And I just don't see him as a man with honor because he is so quick to run to these major incidents that happen and distort the truth and put out false, misleading information. And he's done this numerous times. He did this for an incident we had here in Louisville with the Breonna Taylor case. And like I said, and he's already started poisoning the waters and poisoning the well with everything that's going on with this case by spreading misinformation, lies, and unconfirmed assumptions. So he gets on the radio a couple days ago, on the TV, and then he says that the officers went to the wrong address. Well, guess what? That was proven to be false. The officer was not at the wrong address. He was at the right address, as a matter of fact. You can hear it in the video when the lady tells him to go to 1401. The officer goes to 1401. Then he says that the officer did not announce. Okay, I'll give it to you. He didn't announce on the first knock. But the two preceding knocks, the officer states, Sheriff's Department, open the door. Sheriff's Department, open the door. So that's another lie we can toss out. And then he goes and says that officers kicked in the door without a warrant, ran into this man's house and just shot and killed this black man dead for no reason. As you all saw from the video, that was false as well. That was a lie. And now we'll say Ben Crump had not yet seen the video at this point in time, but so he was using his First Amendment right to put out what is his opinion or belief of what he thought happened. And that's wrong. I think for you to put out false, misleading information without seeing a video is disgusting. How can you have an opinion on something that you've not seen? Unless you're trying to get a payday and muddy the waters. And then we start going off of this. He starts going off on this, assuming the officer is racist and afraid of black people. And because he saw a black man with a gun, he didn't give him a chance to comply and just shot him dead because he didn't like black people. That's a gross assumption. And how can Ben Crump say that about this officer? And Ben Crump doesn't know this officer. We don't know nothing. We don't know this officer's name. So how is Ben Crump so comfortable making such statements? And the thing is, while all of this is perfectly legal, it is disgusting and shows a character flaw on the behalf of Ben Crump. It's not illegal to lie and deceive people for the most part, all right? I made a video on my Instagram a few weeks ago about officers lying and using deception to gain access into a citizen's home to serve a warrant. And people were asking me how I felt about it. And I told them, you know what? Although it's perfectly legal, I don't believe as a police officer, I should be doing it. I don't do it because even though the court say it's okay, even though the court say I can do it, I'm not okay with doing that because I believe that I am misrepresenting the profession of policing by doing so. Because a police officer is supposed to bring truth. A police officer is supposed to be above reproach. A police officer is supposed to be of the highest quality content and character. And how can I call myself a police officer if I'm lying to someone to gain access into their home in order to arrest them or in order to serve a warrant? And there are times in this career where you can probably have to do that, but I don't want to be in a situation where I have to because I don't want to betray this badge and what I believe my morals and values, and I don't want to betray God. But like I said, that's not how I want to live my life. I don't want people to see me as a lying snake. And to me, it's not practical in my everyday life, and even though it's legal. Eh, I believe that if we're going to exercise our First Amendment rights, as I read to you all in this Constitution, that we have to do so justly and righteously. No, it's my personal opinion that we have the responsibility to speak truth when communicating with others about hot topics, and we have to lead them down a path to the truth. And if we don't know what the truth is, I think it's okay to just say, I don't know, or I'm not sure. But for some odd reason, when these incidents happen and people get so emotionally wound up, we use our First Amendment rights to just pushing narratives that we don't know out of emotions. And then everybody uses their First Amendment rights to kind of pick a side. And then the finger pointing starts every time something big hits the news. And I think it's okay to just sit back and listen, observe, and wait for the investigation to conclude. I think it's okay not to have an opinion when something happens immediately. Immediately. And that's one of my biggest gripes with social media, and these profiles and people. And I mean, cops, non-cops, activists, politicians, everybody has to throw their opinion in the ring right away. And then I mean, and like I said, man, these people, some of these people on social media have large followings, I mean, massive followings. I don't have a great following. I have like 2,000 people on my Instagram, bro. I don't know, and I'm cool with that, But I think that the people that follow me on Instagram know the type of person I am and the type of officer I am. And I don't try to misrepresent who I am and what I do and what I believe in any sort of way, So and like I said, I want to separate myself from other officers on social media. I want to separate myself from other people on social media. Like I don't want to just be Dexter the cop, Dexter the author, the Christian, the conservative. I just want to be Dexter. I just want to be my own person. And I don't want to throw my hat into the ring with everybody and put out an opinion, but that's biased and full of emotion. And even though I have the freedom to do so, I think I choose to exercise my freedom of speech with a little bit more restraint so that when I do voice an opinion on a matter, that it's not one that people will take lightly, and that it's an opinion that people will say, you know what, this sounds well thought out, respectful, meaningful, and reasonable. So therefore, like I said, yes, we have freedom of speech, or we can go out here and say, we could tell some outrageous lies. And unfortunately, it's okay. But like I said, it's okay, but is it practical? Is you using your freedom of speech to tear somebody down, to ruin somebody's career, to put more money in your pocket? You're free to do so. But is that practical and is that the right thing to do? And I gotta say, no, it's not. And that's why I just have my tolerance for Ben Crump and a lot of political activists is just zero, man. Like I just don't have anything for these people because I've seen them do this so many times. Every time a black person dies, it's horrible. Well, hell, anybody dies, it's horrible. It's a tragedy, yo. But in comes Ben Crump, and then he takes this situation and he magnifies it 100 times more than what it is, yo, and makes this giant racial mess out of it and just causes more divide using his First Amendment rights, yo. Even though he's legally allowed to, you know. But I'm like, is that the legacy that you want to live? That's not the legacy I want to live. That's not the legacy I want to leave for my kids. That it's okay to say whatever you need to say to put money in your pocket and to win this court case. Because I feel like truth has to win in the end, regardless of what the First Amendment says. And if you are using your First Amendment rights to take people away from the truth, that's on you. But I just feel like you're not yielding your First Amendment rights in a just manner. Like I said, that's just me and my personal opinion on that. And so, another thing I try not to do on social media when these big incidents happen, and everybody's kind of losing their mind and out of whack, I try not to read the comments on the issues because they are filled with such an ignorant amount of comments by basement dwellers who hate cops or any form of authority. Then you got the vet bros who served like one tour in Iraq in 2007, and they were a cook at that time, but they never left the base. And they think they know all things when it comes to policing, even though they haven't fired a weapon, haven't cleared a room or done a full push-up since they left service like 10 years ago. It's people who have no clue about police tactics, law, or policing in general that are in the comments ready to crucify this officer. And the one thing that keeps being brought up in this incident is the Second and Fourth Amendment. And that is in regards to this poor, innocent airman who was deprived of his rights. And I'm not just saying that with I'm not saying that with sarcasm, and I mean that to the fullest with the information we know at the moment. And but like I said, that could change later. We don't know Mr. Fortson's mindset at the moment. We don't know if he opened the door with the intent to hurt we don't know because the investigation is still pending, man. But I want to take you all back to the Constitution, to the Second Amendment. And everybody's got a favorite amendment. They're all my favorites because they all benefit me as an American. But the Second Amendment, one of the most highly contested amendments in this country, which is wild and bizarre to me because it is because of this Second Amendment our country exists as it does today. Without this amendment, we would have never beat the British, and we would never become America without our guns. So I'm glad that our founding fathers were like, hey, maybe we need the people to be armed in a militia. So in case the government gets too strong and starts to overpower, we can take back power. And guess what? That is why the Second Amendment was created. And it says here, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, it's crazy that we have states in America like New York and Illinois and California that are like, no, you can't have a gun, despite what the Constitution says, which is kind of wild to me. But I gotta say this. So when Airman Fortson answered the door and he had a gun in his hand, I want to go ahead and put this out there. He did nothing wrong or illegal that day. He was well within his rights to be armed inside of his home when he entered the door. I mean, the man worked in the special operations wing of the Air Force, leading me to believe that he has some sort of level and some sort of skill when handling firearms. Possibly. I don't really know what he did inside the special operation wing. I mean, that's just me assuming. But I'm an avid supporter of the Second Amendment, and I encourage everyone to get a gun to protect themselves, protect their families, and their property. But I'm an even bigger proponent of people getting trained in the handling of firearms. It's a right to have a firearm, but it comes with a big responsibility. And being properly trained in how to carry a firearm is one of those responsibilities. There is nothing more dangerous in this world than somebody who is a freedom loving American who wants a gun and picks up a gun and has no formal training. That is the most dangerous person in this country, an untrained person with the gun. I've seen so many young kids play with guns. So many young want to be gangsters carrying guns and they accidentally shoot themselves because guess what? They're not trained. They're treating it like a toy, but they don't know that ain't a toy in their hand, man. That's a dangerous weapon that can kill people. Guns have killed thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in this country. But you got people that think it's okay to just play with it and treat it like it's a Nerf gun, and it's not. Officers are trained on how to encounter armed citizens. That's just something we do. It's part of what we do as cops. But most citizens are not trained on how to conduct themselves when armed and encountering an officer. And here's the thing about officers. We've all seen the movie Forrest Gump. We've all heard the famous line, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Well, I'm here to tell you all something in reference to Forrest Gump and about police officers. When someone calls 911, you never know what kind of officer you're going to get. And here's the thing. You got officers. When you dial 911, you don't know who the officer is coming to your house. You've got officers that are on the job that are afraid of their own shadows. You've got officers who will shoot up their patrol car because an acorn drops on their car and they think that there's somebody inside their car armed and shooting at them. And when that acorn hits their car, they think they've been shot. You've got aggressive and confident officers. You've got really smart officers who are well versed in law and the Constitution. You've got some officers who are so dense that that somebody has to nudge this dude every couple hours to remind him to breathe. We have those officers around. There are fat officers and out of shape. And then you got some officers that are absolute PT studs. We have some officers who are so bad at shooting that if they put their gun directly against their head and pulled the trigger with a contact shot, they would somehow still miss. We've got some officers that are horrible at shooting, y'all. And I have been next to some of them on the range, and it's terrifying looking at that target. And I'm just like, Lord God, please don't ever let this officer get into a critical shooting, to a critical incident. He gonna shoot up the whole neighborhood and not shoot one thing. Man, we have different level of officers. And that's the sad thing, man. Like everybody has this romantic ideal in their mind of what an officer is supposed to look like, how they're supposed to act, how they're supposed to react, and what they're supposed to say and do. And it's this perfect version we have created in our mind. But reality is far from what we have in our mind. Cops are humans. And guess what? And humans have a response to stress like any other person. The crazy thing is people have the same perception about military members, especially special operations soldiers. Because everything nowadays, special operator this, Delta Force this, Navy SEAL that, Green Beret this and that. Everyone thinks these guys are all the best of the best. And there is a degree of truth to that. But the truth is, guess what? There are turds and horrible soldiers within the ranks of these elite units. And there are guys that are poor performers, poor shooters, and everything. They're just really tough mentally. And they can take a lot of crap, yo. But guess what? They are humans and they have flaws. So, with that in mind, citizens need to be aware of that. When you get called an officer, when an officer comes to you, you don't know what kind of officer you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get an officer Dexter Pitts who's super friendly, super nice, just going to talk to you nice and kindly. But if you get out of line, I'm going to rip your arms off and beat you with them. I have the ability to do both and go between both worlds because I've been doing this long enough and I'm confident in my job and how I do it. And I'm confident in my physical abilities. But you're not guaranteed to get me on a phone call. You might get that officer that's terrified to be there. You might get an officer that's afraid of black people. It's possible. You don't know. I don't know like I said, I know who's a good officer and who's not. But like I said, there's officers with certain gifts that are better in certain areas than others. Trust me, there are officers that can, when it comes to policy, well, there's officers that can outdo me in the policy arena all day. But you know what? There's nobody that's going to outdo me in common sense because that is how I strive, because there's a lot of things and I just don't know in general about policy, sometimes state law, because state law is like 1,000 pages. Policy is a couple hundred pages. U.S. Constitution, hey, I know what I need to know from the Constitution. And if somebody comes to me with something I'm not sure about in the Constitution, guess what I do? I pull out my book and I look at it. And if not, I got an app on my phone, the US Constitution app, that I can refer to as well. Somebody's telling me something I'm not sure. Like, you know what? I don't know about that. I don't know that amendment, but you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna look it up real quick. And so, like I said, you have to be ready to adjust yourselves and your behavior when an officer comes in contact with you at your house. And I already know what some of y'all are thinking. You know what? It's not my job to readjust or change myself when encountering an officer when I'm using my rights, Officer Pitts. And you know what? You're right. I agree. It's not. But let me ask you this one question. Do you want to live or do you want to die? Do you want to walk away from this situation or do you want your family to get rich off of your death that could have possibly been avoided if you had decided to, you know what, maybe I'm going to back down a little bit and chill, take a different avenue of approach because this guy seems a little unhinged with this badge. And like I said, I don't know about you all, but I'm trying to live for my family, not die to prove a point. I'd rather have my day in court than have my family bury me. But that is subject to change depending on the situation because there are some causes in this life in reference to the Constitution that I am willing to die for. And I'll be honest, man, one of the biggest arguments with this case is the fact that Airman Fortson had a firearm in his hand when he entered the door. And a lot of people are questioning this. And I'll tell you all, he was not wrong for doing so. He is backed by law as an American citizen to do so. I want to read to you all the Fourth Amendment. Hold on one second. Well, you know what? I'm not telling. I'm jumping ahead. Sorry, jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead, man. Getting a little passionate, man. It's oh man, definitely getting a little passionate. It's man, just a horrible situation, and like I said, I just hate that any of this has happened, and like I feel bad for everybody involved, and I just hate it. And so, where was I at? Like I said, one of the biggest arguments is, you know, like he was allowed to be armed in his home. I mean, he was a law-abiding citizen. He was in the Air Force. From what we know, he was a good dude. And there's nothing wrong with being armed. Like I said, he's backed by the Constitution. He's backed by law and everything he did. But I asked this one question. Was him entering the door with the gun the best decision in that moment? And that your answer to that could be a very subjective response. And like I said, I'm not saying that he was wrong for doing it, but had he not and came to the door with a gun, like I said, I could Monday morning quarterback this thing to death, yo. It would have probably been a different response. But we don't know that now. But when it comes to our rights, we can do things because, like I said, the Constitution says we could do them. But just because we have the freedom to do these things, does that make it practical and reasonable to do? And I think a lot of people get lost when it comes to practicality and being reasonable in using our rights. So I have a couple examples here. You can walk down a street, a crowded street in your state, depending on the gun laws, with your gun in hand, finger on the trigger, gun at your side, pointing to the ground, not pointing at anybody, just simply at your side, pointing at the ground. And while you're walking, you can scream, I hate all you people. You all suck. I hope you all die. And guess what? You've done nothing wrong at that point and have not committed a crime because you're illegally in possession of a firearm under your state's law, under constitutional carry law, like here in Kentucky. You're allowed to yell at people, I hate you. I think you're stupid. I think you're ugly. I hope you die. That's not illegal to say, I hope you die. Now, if you say, I'm going to kill you while you're holding a gun, different set of circumstances, bro. You can't have a gun in your hand and tell somebody, I'm going to kill you. But like I said, if you're doing what I said you were doing, you are 100% allowed to do it. It's not illegal. And it's not a crime. Like I said, you've done nothing wrong. But you have to ask yourself, what type of response are you going to elicit from the public? And when somebody sees this action going on that's legal, guess what they're going to do? They're going to call the police. Even though it's legal, the police are going to respond. What kind of response are you eliciting with your behavior? People are going to be terrified and scared of you. Yeah, you're in your within your rights, but is that how you want to make your fellow Americans feel? That you're put this situation with you could possibly go from a crazy guy with a gun in the street to a crazy guy shooting people. Situations are fluid and change in the heat of a moment. Do you want to take a risk with that? Would you do that? I wouldn't do that. What's the point? It's not practical. It's not reasonable. It lacks common sense. It's stupid. But just because the Constitution says I can do it, do you think I'm going to do it? Hell no. Like another situation. Can you walk to a school and stand in front of the school on a public sidewalk, and in front of the school while you're standing there, can you stand there with a loaded rifle? Absolutely, you can. Now, there might be some laws within certain schools that say you can't come within, so many yards of the school with a firearm. But as far as I'm concerned, you're on a public sidewalk and you have in a constitutional carry state. You can go there and stand in front of that school with a fully loaded rifle slung across your chest at the low ready, finger on the trigger. And guess what? You are perfectly legal to do so. You're fine to do so. And guess what? Somebody's going to call the police because even though it's legal, is it practical and is it necessary? What type of response do you think you're going to elicit? And then when you consider America's history with school shootings these last couple years, what kind of response do you think this is going to create? Of course, police are going to approach you. Of course, people are going to see you and be concerned. Why is this guy standing in front of a school full of children with the rifle? Do you think people are going to go, oh, that guy, he's just exercising his First Amendment rights? No, that's not going to be anybody's first thought. Remember Uvalde? Kid walking down the street with a rifle and goes straight into the school and kills a bunch of kids? Bro, no, use common sense, man. Legal? Yes. Practical? Smart? Common sense? No, it's not. And like I said, I made a few posts about this on my Instagram post on I am Pitts1 on Instagram. If you're not following me, please be sure to follow me. That's I am Pitts the number 1 on Instagram. Help me get them followers up, man. But somebody they asked this question, and it was in reference to should American citizens suffer consequences for exercising their rights? And remember, he said something about in reference to I don't think that this is what the founding fathers had in mind of U.S. citizens exercising their rights and suffering consequences from exercising those rights. And the truth is, I agree. I don't think the founding fathers want American citizens to suffer harsh and severe punishment or persecution from the government. I agree. However, like the examples I'm giving, sometimes we as freedom loving Americans and people that are all Constitution, I'm all Constitution. Some of us are just so in it. I think we push the limits of our rights beyond the point of common sense. And sometimes when we do that, we suffer unintended consequences. And like I said, it's a noble ideal to think that we should be free of consequences when using our rights. It's not illegal to go cheat on your wife. If you a player, knows you married and you happily married and you decide, no, I'm gonna go bang 3 women tonight and I'm gonna post it online and tell my wife about it. You can't sit there and not, you can't sit there and tell your wife, well, I'm free to do so. Well, you are. But there are consequences that come from such behavior. You can go to work and tell your boss, I hate you, you suck. This is the worst job I've ever had. You're free to do so. You will not be arrested for doing so. But there are consequences to life. There are consequences to the things we do in life. Whether those consequences are intended or unintended, there's consequences, negative and positive. Like I said, the thought of being free of consequences from using our inalienable rights given to us by the Constitution and our forefathers, it's a noble ideal. It's great in theory, but that ain't how real life works, man. I mean, do you expect the responding officers responding to these incidents I told you about or these examples, do you expect them to not be on edge and a little shaky as they approach you, even though you're not doing anything illegal when you're within your rights? How do you expect an officer, a human being, to respond to you if you're standing somewhere in public with a fully loaded rifle, even though it's your right to, but you're in a place where there's a lot of people, and the potential for you taking that gun, turning it on a bunch of innocent people and killing them is is high and possibly imminent. I'm not saying you're gonna do it, yo, but why would you want to put the officer on edge? Why would you want that stress response from that officer? Why? Because I can in the constant, and I understand because I can. But let me tell you something. That's probably one of the worst arguments I've ever heard from anybody that does anything stupid. Why'd you do it? Because I can. Because it's not illegal. I mean, that is the argument of a. I was about to say a different word. I'm not going to say that word. That is the argument of an incompetent person that is lacking common sense. You shouldn't just do things because you can do them. Like I said, no reasonable person would do any of these things. None of them. And so, oh man, I got lost, huh? Sorry. Like I said, like I said, we don't want officers responding to situations like this and being in a heightened state of alert. Because, like I said, officer, he's armed, he's got a gun, and if he views himself for the public in danger, the officer is going to act accordingly, regardless of what you think you're doing with your rights. Yo, yeah. I mean, don't I personally, like I said, you don't know who's responding. You don't know that officer. You don't know if he's a good shot or a bad shot. You don't know if he's scared of his own shadow. So why take the risk of putting this officer in a situation that might put you in a even worse predicament that could get you hurt or killed? And that's why I want to ask: are you willing to gamble with your life on what type of officer is going to respond? Personally, I'm not. Like I said, I've been pulled over even as a cop, yo, and I try to de-escalate everything. I don't, but even when I'm working as a cop, I just try to de-escalate everything because I don't know who I'm dealing with. I don't want to be the guy that pushes the person over the edge because I treated them bad or said something to them, or this person's shaky and I cause them to do something stupid. I don't want to be the guy. And I can tell you, hey, I've answered the door with the gun before prior to having a doorbell camera. But you know what? I'm trained enough to know that, you know what? I'm not going to show my hand and let this person know I'm armed. So if I go, I'll have it concealed. I'll have it behind my back, or I'll have it in my off shooting hand when I enter the door, poke my head around the door and not completely expose myself, yo. But I've answered my door with my gun in my hand. The person on the other side of the door didn't know it, but I knew it. And like I said, but that comes from training. And like I said, answering your door with a gun in your hand is not unreasonable, but is it best practice? So I want to read to you all the Fourth Amendment now, as we're getting to this segment here. The Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution says the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures and shall not be violated. And no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. If you are a police officer and you don't understand or know the Fourth Amendment, do me a favor. Take your badge off your chest, take your uniform, ball it up, throw it in the trash, and get the hell out of my profession. If you don't understand the Fourth Amendment, you are a liability. If you don't agree with the Fourth Amendment, get out of my country, because I don't want the government knocking on my door and coming into my house unannounced just because they can and taking all my stuff and taking my family. But that's why I'm glad that we had our founding fathers who were smart enough and had suffered under British rule that they said, we're not going to let this happen again. So a couple people have asked and suggested and said that, was Airman Fortson deprived of his Fourth Amendment rights? This is kind of a mixed bag for me based upon what we know. It's not a simple blanket answer of yes or no. It's some of both, actually. Fortson was an American citizen, lawfully in his home, lawfully holding a firearm, and he was shot and killed by an agent of the state. and had done nothing wrong or illegal that we know of so far. So, yes, he was deprived of being secure in his home. But we also have to look at the word unreasonable in this context when we read the Fourth Amendment. Were the officer's action unreasonable at the time? And like I said, it's one of those things where it's kind of subjective and kind of a mixed bag. So we have to look at this. One, the officer was legally there because he was called to the scene on a domestic incident in progress. Did the officer knock and announce his presence? The first knock, no. The second two knocks, yes, before he answered the door. So, yes, and so it is what it is, man. He was well within policy, whatever the policy is, and well within legal jargon of being at the house. Okay, now take into account an officer's training from day one, too. As police officers, we are taught that domestic violence incidents are the most dangerous and fluid encounters we can have. Countless numbers of officers have been killed on domestics. Plus, the officer was told that there was a history of domestics at this location. Personally, I want to know the entire history behind that statement and that call and where that came from. But we will have to wait until the investigation concludes. But regardless, the officer, when approaching these situations, is still at a heightened state because of this. Like I said, domestics are horrible, man. Right before I left Louisville Metro Police and went to my new department, I was sent on a domestic in the hood. I was the only officer on scene when I got there, and there was about 6, 7, 8 people out in the yard yelling, going back and forth, arguing and fighting. I go up the stairs because somebody points that she's in there. I'm like, who's she? The next thing you know, I'm staring at a crazy short black lesbian with a ripped shirt with blood on it, holding a freaking kitchen knife, a giant kitchen knife. And I'm looking like, ma'am, please drop the knife. And I don't know what she was on, but she was not listening and she did not hear me. But guess what I did? I had enough space between us. I drew my weapon and I told her, ma'am, drop the knife or you will be shot, because I'm concerned for my life. And guess what? I'm concerned for everybody else's life in the yard. Somebody out here got into it with this girl and bloodied her up and cut up her shirt. Yeah, I was not excited about that, man. I was terrified because I was like, man, this is right after 2021, 2020, 2021. But the last thing I want to do in that time frame was shoot a short black lesbian. That's the last thing I wanted to do and deal with you. But thank God, somehow my voice broke through the clouds in her head and she got smart and dropped that damn knife. So, like I said, you have to take into account when we go to these situations, we have training. We're told this from day one. And personally, like I said, I just want to know the history of that apartment. But like I said, we got to wait, man. But, I've seen a lot of people, a lot of comments of people saying that the cop is scared or that the cop shouldn't be scared of getting shot and being killed. And like I said, some cops are more scared than others. Some can hide their fear and still operate. But I don't know of any cop that doesn't have some sort of fear in them doing this job. I mean, we might pretend and say we're not scared, but and like I said, honestly, we don't think about it, man. We don't think it's there. We know the potential's there, but you can't operate in this line of work being scared with every call that comes out. And like I said, we have officers that are like that, but that's not a majority of officers. But there are those in uniform that should not be in uniform. I'm not covering for them, But like I said, I every cop is at a point in time is scared. Do you think the officers that responded in Louisville to the Old National Bank shooting a year ago, do you think they weren't scared approaching this giant glass front with a shooter shooting and killing people? And they get up here and they can't see inside the building. They don't know where the shooter is, but they can hear the shots. Do you think it's unreasonable for an officer to be scared? Now, it's unreasonable to be an officer like in the Uvalde situation, to where there's shooting and killing going on the side and you're not doing anything about it because you're scared or whatever. But, that's like I said, that's not most officers, man. But we are human. I have a life. I have family. I have wife. I have kids. I have dreams. I have aspirations of dying an old man in my bed. And I don't want to die in this line of work. I don't want to be shot and killed by a criminal. I don't want to die in a car accident, yo. But guess what? I understand that that's a risk I take when I do this job. And I accept that risk. But that does not take away from the fact that I'm a human and I have fear and I get scared. Fear is a natural human emotion. And like I said, it is not unreasonable for officers to be scared or to have fear when they approach a door and somebody opens the door and that person's holding a weapon. It's not unreasonable. You know? And like I said, if you're scared, don't do the job. Hey, I understand that statement, but hey, he's only human, man. He's only human. Put yourself in that officer's shoes and ask yourself, how would you react? Because I know you're saying what you would do, but guess what? You're not in the situation. You're not under stress. You're not in that moment. You don't know what you would do. I've watched this video and said, you know what he should have done? I've watched many officers do things in videos that have gotten killed and said what that cop should have done. But guess what? I wasn't there and that officer was. When you're in the heat of the moment and you have tunnel vision and you're not thinking properly and you're under your body's stress responses are going off, yeah, you can rely on your training. But at a certain point, your I could never say the word, but your physiology takes over, yo, and like you can only do so much. Like you can train past it to a certain point, but man, it's hard. It's not easy. It's taken me almost 15 years to where I can drive code 3 my police car lights and sirens, yo, and I don't get tunnel vision anymore because I've done it so much to this point. It's automatic. Yo. Like my heart doesn't skip a beat. I don't get all out of sorts and I don't get intense white knuckle in the steering wheel. But I'm as cool and calm as can be because I've done it so much and I'm comfortable doing it. And like I said, I just think it's unreasonable for people to think that police officers shouldn't be scared. It happens. We're humans, man. I just wish that people would stop acting like we're some Boston Dynamic robots with no hearts, no minds, no consciousness. Like we don't have dreams and aspirations for our lives one day, and that we don't mind going out being shot and getting killed because we're cops. You know what you signed up for. Well, yeah, I know what I signed up for, but I hope that doesn't happen. I would hope that you hope that that doesn't happen to me. I would hope that you hope that I make it home to my family every night after my shift. I would hope that you hope that I make it to retirement and go do something else with my life and build a legacy for my children. And like I said, everybody says from the outside looking in what they would have done and what that officer should have done and shouldn't have been scared. It's easy to say when you're not the one staring death in the face. And you're telling me you wouldn't be scared? Please, man, get out of here. And like I said, officers, we are trained to the same standard across the board. But here's what people do got to realize every officer's perception of danger is different. And that's not wrong or right. People see things differently, people perceive things differently. And that ain't necessarily wrong. And hell, Airman Fortson, he was probably terrified as well. I can only imagine. He hears this knock at the door. And I can only question his mindset at the time. And I can't judge him and say he was wrong for what he did because we don't know his mindset at the time. Also, I don't think it's unquestionable to wonder if Airman Fortson heard the officers knock and announce. Maybe he didn't hear him. I mean, it's possible. Maybe he heard a knock. Maybe he didn't hear shit. It's absolutely possible. But we will never know because he's not here to tell the story. And I mean, just from his rank, he's a senior airman. So I'm assuming he's been in the Army or the Air Force about 3 to 5 years. And from his job being in Special Operations Wing, I don't know his history, but maybe he had hearing loss because everybody I know in the military that's been around guns and explosives, we are awful when it comes to hearing. My hearing is horrendous. You can sit here and whisper something to me, and I'll be like, huh? And my kids have to tell me stuff over and over all the time. People I work with over and over all the time. Listening to the police radio work, I have to say 10-9, say again. I did not copy that. I have hearing loss. People in the military typically have hearing loss. So is it possible that Senior Airman Roger Fortson had hearing loss? Like I said, we don't know. But like I said, with the investigation, maybe that's something that come out. That's just me assuming and, putting something out there that it's a possibility. I don't know. The possibilities are endless. But like I said, we don't know because unfortunately he's not here to defend himself. And some have said that the cop was too quick on the trigger and should have de-escalated and gave Airman Fortson time to drop the gun. A lot of people are saying what the officer should have done from behind the safety of their phone screens and not under stress with the gift of hindsight. A lot of people are giving their opinion based off of emotion and what they feel and not based on law. So I've been doing this job for 15 years and I have never seen a specific law or statute that dictates or a dedicated time in exact moment when an officer is supposed to pull the trigger on his gun and shoot someone. People might not like that, but guess what? That's the truth. There is no such law that tells an officer when exactly or when not to shoot. That is up to the individual officer. And that's what the law says. And for those that don't know, we're going to take a look at use of deadly force laws in the state of Florida. And look at that, my mouse died on me because inactive part of me. I'll pull this back up, ladies and gentlemen. So hope you all are still sticking in there. Hope you all enjoying this one. It's been a while, man, but it's definitely been a lot. Like I said, it's very emotional. But let me pull this up for you. So here, if you look, let me share the screen with you. All righty. Right here, it says this is the Florida Senate 2018 Florida statute. We have here use or threaten use of defense in a person. And this is 776.012. We're going down to sector 2. It's section 2. It says a person is justified in using or threatening to use deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening the use of such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily injury to himself or herself or another person, to prevent imminent commission of a forcible felony. A person who uses or threatens to use deadly force in accordance with the subsection does not have a duty to retreat and has the right to stand on his or her ground if the person using or threatening to use deadly force is not engaged in criminal activity and is in a place where he or she has the right to be. I want you to look at that. Is in a place he or she has the right to be. Did the officer have the right to be there? He absolutely did. Now, I've heard people argue. Somebody pushed up to me on online and said, if the shoe was on the other foot and he had shot that officer, you'd be upset. I'm like, absolutely, I would. And I told them why. It's a different story when you're a cop and you're investigating a citizen, somebody's not in a uniform. But when you put it the other way around, if I'm a police officer and I'm called to a domestic and I knock on the door and I yell, police, police, and you peep through the door and you see me in full uniform and it's not October, so this ain't Halloween, you know I'm the police. Now, there are I've encountered some people, I've knocked on some doors, and I've had some old white women answer and say, how do I know you're the police? Like, ma'am, I have nothing else to show you but this uniform. And I remember I reached into my pocket and pulled out my little work ID and put it up to the thing, and she opened the door. But she was still questioning if I was the police. There are just some people that are untrusting, I guess, of a black dude in a police uniform. I don't know what it is, but I've encountered that. But that's not often, but it does happen. It's happened to me numerous times, But it does happen, man. But it's different if I'm decorated in a police uniform and I'm there for a lawful purpose. Now, I told the guy, like, dude, if this officer had been there with the, like, getting off and decided, I'm gonna pick up this call, and he's not in his police uniform, and he goes to that door and he knocks on that door and announces himself as police, police, and that guy opens the door and he sees just a random dude in his door with no police uniform on, and he's got a gun in his hand, I would have. Why are you at my door in this half police uniform with a gun in your hand? I'm going to think you have bad intentions. Guess what? You're probably going to get shot. And so when they say the shoe on the other foot, I'm like, it's different. It is different perspective as a police officer in uniform, man. But people don't understand that, yo. And like I said, people don't see where the officer's perception of danger and what's imminent. Was the officer wrong for shooting? Some people say yes because they think he should have gave him more time. It's like I said, it's easy for you to say that to that officer about that officer, but you weren't there. And that's hard for me to say whether I can't tell him that he's wrong for it because I don't know how he seen what he saw, what he felt, or what he heard, or what he smelled. I don't know. And we haven't heard his part of the investigation in his interview that he's going to have to give before IA for this incident. Like I said, but time will tell. And so, lastly, I want to pull up one more here, one more case law on use of deadly force. And a lot of citizens, I've heard a lot, I've talked to a couple of people that are like, this is a shame. And that, he didn't point the gun at that officer. That officer should go to jail. But here's the deal. A lot of people have feelings about this incident, but a lot of people aren't familiar with certain case law. We have Graham Connor, which kind of sets the precedent for officers and use of force in determining what is reasonable in the commission of an officer's duties. So I'm not going to get deep into Graham v. Connor, but I'm going to jump right to this part where the Supreme Court says and has established this right here, what they believe is reasonable. Said the court then explained, as in other Fourth Amendment text, the reasonableness inquiry is in an excessive force case is an objective one. The question is whether the officer's actions are objectively reasonable in light of the facts and circumstances confronting them, without regard to their underlying intent or motivation. The court also cautioned the reasonableness of a particular use of force must be judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, rather than with the 2020 vision of hindsight. The court further explained the reasonableness of a particular use of force judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene. And its calculus must embody an allowance for the fact that police officers are often forced to make split-second decisions about the amount of force necessary in a particular situation. The court then outlined a non-exhaustive list of factors to determine when an officer's use of force is objectively reasonable. The severity of crime at issue, whether the suspect posed an immediate threat to the safety of the officer or others, and whether he is actively resisting arrest or attempting to evade arrest by flight. And that is straight from the United States Supreme Court, Graham v. Connor. A lot of people, like I said, he didn't have to shoot him. He should have waited. He didn't have to shoot him so quick. He could have gave him a chance. He could have de-escalated. And I hate when people talk about de-escalation, especially citizens. I hate it because people don't understand what de-escalation is. Someone is de-escalating the problem. If I shoot you, guess what? You're de-escalated because you're not at the level you once were. If I shoot you, guess what? You aren't able to necessarily shoot me back. You have been de-escalated. People, civilians see de-escalation and think it's, hey, come here, buddy. Hey, let me give you a hug, man. It's okay. No. No, you're right. I'm wrong. You're right. No, don't worry about it, man. Yeah. Hey, we're gonna be okay, man. Hey, before we go to jail, we're gonna sing Kumbaya. I'm gonna go warm up some hot chocolate, and then I'm gonna hold your hand as we go to jail. Okay, you're fine, buddy. Hey, no, it's not your fault, man. You're just a criminal. People think that's what de-escalation is. That is not de-escalation at all. People have a warped sense of de-escalation. That's why I hate when people tell me to de-escalate. If you want to piss me off as a police officer in uniform, like they used to do to me during 2020 during the riots, you need to de-escalate, officer. You need to de-escalate. And I wanted to break ranks so bad, take my baton, put it against this dude's throat, push him to the ground, and push so hard. But I did not do it because I'm a professional and I knew it was at stake during that time frame. Like I said, I had the thought, I wanted to, but I knew better. Because like I said, if you want to piss me off while in uniform, you tell me to de-escalate, boy. I swear I lose myself whenever somebody tells me to de-escalate. So yeah, if you want to get under my skin, that's exactly how you do it, man. So, like I said, people, like I say, everybody's coming to this case with emotions and feelings about what the officer should have done. So let me ask you, after hearing and reading to you Graham v. Connor on the US Supreme Court, from what they say is reasonable and lawful in reference to an officer's use of force being objectively reasonable by a reasonable officer on that scene, some people are still will read that and still say, no, it's not reasonable. You will have officers that read that and think it's not reasonable. But I will tell you that I think a majority of officers that have watched and seen this video will believe that what the officer did was objectively reasonable based on the circumstances known to him at the time. That officer, was going to this scene believing that there was a domestic at hand that was physical. The officer knocked on the door. Nobody answered. Maybe he thought there's somebody inside that needs help. Who knows? The officer was there legally. The officer that was there to do a job to try to help someone, not hurt someone. The officer knocked on the door and announced. The officer saw a gun. And a lot of people don't realize how quick it is to have a gun at your side. And in a split second, I mean, like a quarter of a second, you can take that gun, cant it upwards, and fire off multiple rounds on a target and kill it in a fraction of a second. A fraction of a second. I do this all the time at the range. We have a one where we are like 3 yards from our target, and you have to hip shoot. As soon as the buzzer goes off, you don't fully present the weapon and extend your arms out. You take your weapon from the holster, cant it up about 90 degrees, and you fire into the target. Guess what? I have never missed at 3 yards that close shooting rapid fire at a target. It's an instant hit. It's a guaranteed hit. It's a point. You're not going to miss. This dude was only a couple feet away from the officer. 3 yards, then cut that into a half. How much more easier is it? Like I said, the officer is not a mind reader. The officer does not know the state of mind of Airman Fortson at that time and place when he answered the door with that gun in his hand. The officer doesn't know if he had ill intent that day. The officer has no clue. So let me ask you, those are you that are not officers, are you willing to gamble your life on a fraction of a second decision? You gamble, you take make that decision and you're wrong and you're dead. You make the decision to shoot your weapon and shoot this guy, guess what? Your life is going to be ruined for a while. You're probably going to lose your job, even though justified, possibly potentially justified, pending the investigation. You still have to live with that and what you did. You still have to go to bed that night knowing I killed this guy and I don't know if he was going to kill me or not. That's a heavy, heavy, heavy thing to go to sleep with on your brain and your heart at night. And I personally, I hope I never have to make that decision, but I've been close. I mean, I've been close to having to make that decision, but in 15 years, I've never had to pull my trigger, thank God. And so, but while everybody's coming into this with their facts, their feelings and that facts, the courts don't care about your personal feelings and your personal opinions. The courts have laid this out clearly in Graham v. Connor. When an officer is allowed to fire, not when the officer should pull the trigger, but when the officer believes it is objectively reasonable to shoot somebody. Like I said, the courts can make that determination to a certain level, but at the end of the day, it is up to the officer on scene to make that call. And that is a hard call to make. I guarantee you that officer, I don't know who he is or what he looks like. No, we don't know nothing about him, but I guarantee you that officer probably has friends and family that he wants to go home to at the end of his shift. And everybody's saying he should have waited. But like I said, are you willing to gamble your life on a fraction of a second and willing to give that guy a moment to pull that trigger or not? That's a hard call to make, man. And I tell you what, only God can judge that officer and tell him that if he was right or wrong. Because God judges the heart. Man does not judge the heart. Only God and that officer know what was on his heart and his mind that day when he chose to pull that trigger on Airman Fortson, who was there legally, who was there holding a weapon and had done nothing wrong at the foreseeable moment from what we know so far. It's so easy to sit here and Monday morning quarterback the officer and Airman Fortson with the gift of hindsight. In my opinion, this is just a crappy and unfortunate situation. There is no winner. I don't think either were unreasonable in their response or in the wrong at the moment. This is what we call Murphy's Law. All that can go wrong will go wrong. And I think Murphy's Law struck that day. Neither are truly at fault from what I see so far. If people are so hell bent on casting blame, what about the person who called 911? I mean, are you willing to shame a concerned citizen who heard something and called 911 out of concern? Personally, I'm not. But how many people have been killed by police officers after a concerned citizen called 911 because they saw something that was concerning? I mean, there are plenty of incidents that this has happened, but I'm not willing to hang a well-meaning citizen out to dry and put the blame on them for doing what they believe was right in the moment because they saw something and they were scared or they believe people were going to get hurt. And just imagine how that person feels right now, knowing that Airman Fortson lost his life and that this cop could possibly face going to jail for the rest of his life or lose his career or have everything that he's worked for to this point taken from him. This guy probably feels horrible. Think about how the officer feels right now. Do you think, I mean, honestly, I want you all to think about this. Do you think the officer woke up that morning and said, I just want to throw everything away in my entire life right now? Everything I've worked for, all the hard work I put in to become an officer, I think I just want to throw it all away and go to prison. And I just want to be dragged through the dirt and the mud on social media and the court of public opinion, have my name tarnished and slandered, and I just want people to think I'm an awful, horrible killer who hates black people. Do you really think the officer woke up with that on his mind this morning when he made the choice to pull that trigger? I don't know him, but I can only assume no, I highly doubt it. I don't know any officer that willingly wants to go through what an officer has to go through in 2024, being a white officer and having shot and killed a black man. I don't know any officer that's volunteering for that type of stress. And I know these officers that have done it. And they all say they wish they had not been in that situation because it's stressful to not only them, but their families. And I'm pretty sure when Airman Fortson woke up that morning, he didn't have a death wish that day either. I'm sure this young kid worked his butt off to get to where he was in the Air Force and seemed to be doing well and having a good career, was in a good spot. I'm pretty sure that what happened to him was not his desired outcome that day. Like I said, could be wrong. I don't know. I don't know his history. I don't know the history with the girlfriend. We don't know the history, but we can only assume. I think as a police officer, I typically tend to assume the worst about people because I deal with the worst of people every day. But to be honest, man, I think most people are good people and want good things and want to do good things. I don't meet too many people with bad intentions, honestly. We only meet people on their worst days and when they're in crisis, yo. So I don't think it's unreasonable to assume that Airman Fortson probably had a life plan, probably had plans for a long career, wife, kids, who knows? I don't know. But I guarantee you he did not wake up that morning with a death wish. Death wish. I don't blame anyone for being upset about this incident. It's just sad and tragic. I think everyone involved is more than likely a decent person from what I've gathered so far. But the investigation could change that. Everyone is looking for the person to blame on both sides. Civilians and military are blaming the officers, and officers are trying to blame the airman for answering the door with a gun, even though he was doing it legally and justly. And the truth is, there's not always a bad guy in these situations. Sometimes there are just people in a situation and crap happens, man. But we want and need a villain to place the blame on because it's a lot easier to make sense of things when we have a villain, when we have an evildoer that's out here trying to do things that are bad and hurt people. It's just easier. It makes more sense that way. It's easier for us to accept that the officer in this incident was just a bad cop, just hated black people. It makes so much more sense for us that way, and that he just wanted to kill somebody. No, it makes more sense for us to just think that Airman Fortson was just a bad dude and he had bad intentions that morning. It's easier for us to think that as opposed to really just sitting here looking at the situation and thinking neither of these guys had bad intentions that day going to this incident. And crap just happens, man. It's an unfortunate incident. That's really what I think it is. Just an unfortunate incident. The way the stars aligned that morning, the way somebody got up and did something on the other side of the world that triggered something over here in this small town. This person did that, and that led this person to do this. And this person called that person, and that person called his girlfriend, and his girlfriend called him, and that officer. I mean, and then just the way the stars and things aligned this day happens, dude. And I know that's not a good enough of an answer for some people, but things just happen sometimes, man, that are out of our control. It's called life. And this is an incident where we can what if it to death, man. What if Fortune had answered the door without the gun? We don't know. What if he had a gun but concealed it? We don't know. What if the officer hesitated a few more seconds? What would have happened? We don't know. We can also one, I'm sorry, getting a little emotional. I mean, we just don't know things, man. We don't know. We have to wait to see how this plays out. And I'm interested to see how this plays out. And until the investigation is completed, I don't think it's right to assign blame or justification to either party involved at this point in time. We've all seen the video. God, I don't want to watch it again. And we have all rode the wave of emotions over the last few days. I was conflicted in my feelings as well, just like everybody else. And I can only imagine the burden, the fear, sadness, and stress being experienced by all those involved and the families. And my heart goes out to the family of Airman Fortson for their loss because it's tragic and he does not deserve to be laying on a cold slab somewhere in a morgue. This is tragic. This is a American airman, a military service member serving his country. This is sad and just tragic. He did not deserve that. I don't think it's wrong to say that as an officer. I don't think it's wrong to say he didn't deserve to die. I don't think it's wrong to say, I wish maybe he had made a different choice. I don't think it's wrong to say that because I'd rather him be here with his family as opposed to the current predicament situation they're in. So before I get ready to get out of here, I want to give my prediction of what will happen with the outcome of this case. I predict the officer will be exonerated and found. This is my prediction, but I think he will be found justified in this case of this shooting, and he will be cleared. And the family will sue, and they will win a lawsuit, and they will be awarded a large payment, which I don't disagree with at all. And the thing is, there's no amount of money that's going to bring this young kid back, man. No amount of money is going to take away that grief. But if anybody deserves it, this family deserves it. So far as we know it. Like I said, this is just a prediction. So, like I said, that could change, but this is just my prediction on the outcome. And regardless of the outcome, here's what we got to realize: the lives of those involved in this are forever changed and forever scarred. And if this incident just so happens to go to criminal trial, I would hate to be a juror on this case because it would be hard to send a decent person away for trying to do a hard job. and making a split-second decision in the moment. That's it, folks. That's the end of this podcast. Went a little longer than anticipated, but it was a lot to kind of get out. It's a lot. It's very emotional. I hate it. I hate that we have to talk about it, but these incidents and these occurrences do happen, and they are extremely unfortunate. And my heart hurts and breaks for everybody involved, man. Everybody involved. And so I'm cautious of my criticism because I am still an officer. I go back to my shift tomorrow, and I don't know what my shift tomorrow holds or brings for me. I could be the one in the news sometime in the coming days. You all could be casting judgment upon for a decision I had to make. And I can only hope and pray that you all think highly of me enough to know and believe that I am out here in the streets doing this job with a good heart, with good intentions, to protect the rights of the people and to protect the people. And I'm holding up this copy of the Constitution I carry. I want you all to see this and know that this is why I do this job. And I take what I do serious because of this document. I don't want to take it for granted. I don't want people to think that I'm out here trying to do the wrong thing. But I do this job because I love the people and I love this country. And I love our founding fathers for what they have created here for us. I love America. Even though America did not start out as a great place for my ancestors, America has transformed itself into a country that is more than accepting of people that look like me. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Iron Pits podcast. I appreciate you all for tuning in for this episode. If you all could do me a favor, it's been a while, go and leave me a review. Also, if you could, please share the show, especially this show. I feel like a lot of people need to hear this and hear a reasonable breakdown of opinion of this incident. So also, if you could, my book is out. I'm coming up on, well, I think 2 or 3 years published. I Am Pitt's Memoirs of an American Patriot. If you want to get more of a sense of who I am and what I do and why I believe what I believe, go to iampits.com and order yourself a copy. You can go to Amazon and get a copy. I think currently they're only like $5, but you will see that I'm a patriot and that I love this country and that I love America. Also, be sure to follow me on Instagram on iampits1. All right, that's iampits, the number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Iron Pits podcast. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all on the next.